Hello, my name is Yaman. I'm saying that because I just realized that most of you guys probably think my real life name is Habibi. No, it's not Habibi. My real life name is Yaman. Anyways, most of you know me as Absolute Habibi, and today we are continuing our Portugal campaign that we showcased on Friday? Yes, on Friday. If you haven't checked it out already, it will be in the top left as a suggested video here. But a quick recap for you guys, probably because you're too TikTok brain from watching Family Guy shorts and videos of people lying on Reddit.
IF26 married a man M29 who is addicted to playing video games that are literally just a map.
We started as Portugal, a relatively poor nation that has unique advances to help them explore earlier and faster. We made friends with the other Catholic Iberians and began wars of expansion against Morocco and Granada. We eventually found Madeira, which was our first colonial charter, and got Aragon in a union which meant defending it from France. We eventually found the New World in the early 1500s, started colonizing Brazil and the Caribbeans, then started a series of wars against Mesoamericans using a combination of professional armies and conquistadors. However, colonies are a big investment requiring pops and money, as well as a lot of tender care and love and slaves to get them off the ground and get the extraction of resources out of the New World and back home. We then got another union over England, which made our rulers English and protected Aragon from France once again. This leads us to now, where we finally integrated Aragon, continued expansions against Morocco and Mesoamerica. We're starting to make really good money, but really this is just the start of the money making. Just wait until the end of this video to see how much our income skyrockets by the mid-1700s. And what better way to start this video than another war of conquest against Morocco. Morocco was very weak compared to earlier due to our conquests against them, but Tunis was still a bit of a threat. I should also mention this is the part of the game where I stop using levies and I'm on full professional armies due to having enough manpower from manpower generating buildings such as training fields and armories. A personal preference of mine, I like around mid 1500s where I just stop using levies altogether and investing a lot in those manpower generating buildings. Yes, they do have a cost in terms of goods maintenance, but those goods that they need create a price pressure on those goods, making the buildings that produce those goods, weaponsmiths, gunsmiths, have higher demands, making them more profitable. Morocco also didn't upgrade the next fort level bastions, which meant that I could assault every single fort that I went for, and I can easily piece them out. As a nation going for colonies in EU5, it's always fun looking at the population map mode and seeing your pops literally leaving and going to the New World as you select the locations and provinces that they come from. I also started colonizing North America, starting with Florida, but now I had some competition, mainly from Spain, France, and the Papal States. England was colonizing, but it was up in Canada. We can also quickly monitor how our colonial nations are doing in terms of income by checking on their tax base. And you can clearly see that our colonies that came from expansion are already making more money than the colonies that we have been growing for years. It's also cool to see that our naval investments are paying off, with even the Azores being really high control relatively to the other side of the nation because of this maritime presence. Even Aragon, the newly integrated land, had decent control. Although we could accept Catalan culture, we still could not accept Moroccan, and I didn't plan to do that at any point in this campaign, rather just assimilate them. But this led to a series of rebellions and revolts in Morocco that we had to deal with. This is a quick economic check in 1560, making a lot of money, mostly from trade. This is also when we became a great power, number 8 in the entire world. This made us eligible to become a hegemony, and we right away became the military hegemon due to having the largest standing army, and cultural hegemon for having the highest cultural influence. Being the military hegemon means we get more war score cost reduction from war, meaning we can take more land in peace deals, And being the cultural hegemon means that we can assimilate entire areas, essentially assimilating all of our Moroccan lands with just one cabinet action. It's only a matter of time now before the Moroccans are speaking Portuguese and eating bacalhau. It actually looks pretty good. One resource that we were constantly running in a deficit for was paper. And this was mainly because we upgraded the Portuguese ordinances government reform, which consumes more paper as a pop need and building need. So constantly, we're building more and more paper makers, which we did get an upgraded version of in the Age of Reformation. We also used our Moroccan lands to make sugar plantations. These buildings on top of normal RGOs can produce the good and also employ slaves. Yes, employ slaves. And due to the Reformation situation being active, we got a bunch of chain of events that allowed us to send heretics and heathens to our New World colonies, which we did. Mass use of slaves, expulsion of heretics and heathens. Chat, are we the baddies?
Are we the baddies?
Nah, it's the 1500s. Let's just do another war of conquest against the Mesoamericans. Even though they were pretty high pop nations here, they were super technologically behind. Not even having castles, but instead stockades, which were super easy for our professional troops to assault. And it was even easier to beat them on the battlefield. Colonies were starting to get self-sufficient, but I still kept feeding them large amounts of money so they can keep properly building up, and that way when I declare war on the Mesoamerican nations, my colonies can just do all the work and I don't even have to send armies there. We beat up Morocco once again, this time using our unique unit, the Tercios, which are a really powerful unit. They have higher initiative, which means they join battles faster, take less morale damage, and deal more morale damage. Wait, is one of my viceroys Hussite? While we were fighting this war, something kind of bad happened to us. England as a nation decided to convert to Lutheranism. Why was this bad? Well, because now that they are Lutheran and we both have the succession law that the heir needs to be the same religion as the ruler, this means that their heir will be different than our heir, essentially ending the union. So we had two options. Either we abandon the union when our ruler dies, or we also embrace Lutheranism and, I guess, keep the union. So what are the advantages of being Lutheranism? Well, just as a base of the religion, we do get an extra tax efficiency, which is quite nice, but we also get church aspects that we will take later on as we get more religious influence. The main disadvantage is that most of our country is still mainly Catholic, so we're gonna have to convert a lot of people, which will upset pops and cause revolt, and our claims from the Treaty of Tordesillas are no longer valid. We also get some cool religious actions that we can do, but we're not going to do those until we first get our church aspects. And it was good that we embraced the Reformation quickly because our ruler died shortly after, and we maintained our union over England. Funnily enough, we also got a new dynasty, the Anjou dynasty, which was the same as France. Morocco was destroyed once again. Just look at those casualty differences. In 1584, we became the economic hegemon, making the most money out of any great power. Now, back in England, when we pushed England to our integration level so we can start annexing them, their estates did not like that, leading to a series of estate civil wars that we had to deal with, because if we didn't stop them, they would enthrone their own ruler and end our union. This England is becoming more of a problem than something good. Also, being multiple hegemons made England not like us as much as we needed them in order to start integrating them. And our recent conversion to Lutheranism started a bunch of religious turmoil events. I tried to fix this by converting and also suppressing Catholic revolts in our nation. I forgot to mention this earlier in this video or in the last video, but Portugal has the unique building, the Feitoria, which you can't build in Portugal, but you can build overseas, giving production efficiency and maritime presence. A really, really nice building to build in all of your coastal holdings outside of Portugal. While our expansions in the New World and also in Morocco were looking really good, I wanted to start looking at Asia. Now, I first tried to see if any nation would sell me a location in India, but no one would budge with the amount of money that we had. But what we could do was make spy networks and claim exploration CBs on different nations, targeting nations that had low alliance networks and would be easy to conquer. Meanwhile, in England,
how many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man?
our aggressive expansions in Morocco and Mesoamerica started building quite a bit of antagonism with some nations, but we could improve relations to remove some of that antagonism. My ruler ended up dying, leaving the Portuguese Union in the hands of a child, and putting my consort, who was a Native American, as our regency. I married her to see how the DNA would affect the children, just having some Native American genes into the royal family pool. But now it was time to take our troops onto a little adventure, an Indian adventure, followed by a Malaya adventure, giving us Singapura, which was a market center. This means we can send spices and cloves back home. If you read some of my comments in the last video, I talked about how I actually learned some lessons from this campaign. I actually did not play Portugal much while playtesting, and I want to save it for this video specifically. But I generally learned that as Portugal, it's not really the best idea to just colonize and focus on colonizing, but rather going to the old world and getting market centers and then extracting resources from Malaya, India, and China, and maybe even Japan. Land, I would maybe make small colonial nations, but then keep all of the market centers and locations with high trade advantage and trade capacity for myself, so I can get all of the profit and not share it with a colonial nation. Then with those locations, we would expand marketplaces, build a lieutenancy and later viceroyalty for more control, and fetorias. And I also learned that if you take diplomatic focus in Age 3 and take the advances that give trade range as well as trade cost over sea, you can actually easily trade with these markets directly to your home market back in Iberia. In 1612, we started the annexation of England. This was going to take a very long time. We did more wars of conquest in India and Mesoamerica, and found Japan, which we could already start trading with. This also triggered some events in India where they could get Portuguese merchants and giving us trade power in their lands without owning any land directly. And we noticed there was a huge surplus of slaves in our Singapore market, which we sent to Brazil. Castile ended up declaring us as a rival as they coveted our lands in Iberia, but this really wasn't a problem for us as now we could take them on alone. At this point, we had conquered a large chunk of Mesoamerica and started colonizing California. I wonder how England's doing right now. And now with money flowing into Lisboa, it was time to expand into Castile. We had a big professional army at this point, and Castile was just isolated and not having that many strong allies. I'm not going to beat around the bush here or try to hide anything, but there is a general, I think, problem with AI not really building as many professional troops as they can or should rather until like mid 1600s. And also the AI doesn't prioritize military techs as much as they should. And this is the same problem in Victoria 3 and Stellaris, which also have like tech trees, also in Imperial Rome. But the AI doesn't like rush for all the good military techs like a human player would. So that means that you generally, after the first 2 ages, should have stronger armies than all your neighboring AIs if you're focusing the military techs and you're getting the proper military techs. In this case, Castile did have the right infantry and artillery military techs, but they didn't get the bastion military tech, just like Morocco, which meant that they were still on castles, which were very assaultable. Don't get me wrong though, Castile still built a lot of troops and still had a pretty sizable army. And they also were not making as much money as us because we were, of course, bringing in trade from all over the world. Also, I don't know how people would feel when they start EU5 for the first time and they're just getting rolled by AI's rushing military techs. So that's why I say, I mean, like, is it that big of a problem? I really don't know. This is the peace deal I ended up taking from Castile, connecting Andalusia to Portugal. We also collected a bunch of prisoners from this war, which we ended up ransoming to reduce our antagonism, a really cool mechanic. We ended up accepting Castilian culture, which just like Aragon and Catalan was cheaper to accept due to being in the same culture group. But with the conquest of Sevilla, that means another market center under our control. I probably shouldn't have left fantasy formables on. It was now the age of absolutism. Time to get more crown power, integrate faster, increase our control, and reign in our estates. This also meant two new situations that start in this age. The golden age of piracy, which allows you to create pirate subjects and also pirates become more effective, and the Colombian Exchange, which allows you to create new RGOs in the old world and the new world, switching between where you can place them. This means that we can take highly coveted goods in the new world and start producing them in the old world, such as chili or coca or tobacco. Climate and vegetation play a factor here. You can't just make tobacco anywhere or chili anywhere, but right away we can introduce chili into Morocco and just start pumping that out, since chili is a very, very nice RGO. And also, we can take coffee and start producing it in Colombia and in Brazil, a good that doesn't even exist in the New World, but now we bring it there and we can ship it back to Europe. Age of Absolutism seems amazing, except for the part where we have to deal with the core and country disaster. Much like EU4, going through this disaster means more rebellions and unhappy estates, which means more rebellions. Also less money from the states, since we're unable to tax them when they're this disloyal. But be careful, don't take loans, because each loan reduces crown power. But also, like EU4, this disaster is actually good in the long run if we push towards absolutism value, since we can push our crown power very heavily and also revoke privileges from estates using money instead of stability. During this disaster, we can really focus on getting more crown power through buildings such as counting houses and minting offices, as well as unlocking a new road type, the modern road, since more control will also lead to more crown power. But here comes the rebellions, first starting with a noble civil war. This first war wasn't that bad. We just had to occupy some territories, fight some rebels. I did kind of regret upgrading forts in preparation for Castile's war because I couldn't rush them. Now, in order to end this disaster, there's three conditions. There's one, you let it go for 20 years and that causes it to be a stalemate. Two, you reach 55% crown power, you have less than 15 estate privileges, and you're at least 80% absolutism value. And then the third is that all of your estates are happy with you and you are at least 80% liberalism. I've never really gone the liberalism path because I always just use this as an opportunity to get as much crown power as possible, because that's the good part about this disaster, is that it gives you an opportunity at the cost of like rebellions and upset estates to really increase your crown power. And as we covered in the last part, crown power is really, really good. Increases your trade income, increases your cabinet efficiency, gives you a lot of buffs. It's amazing. Also in this time period, we get another situation, the Little Ice Age. This is going to make our winters longer and reduce our food production, potentially leading to starvation. Then after dealing with our first rebellion, a pretender rose against us, leading to another civil war. But look at our control now, it has increased so much compared to the last 50 years. And of course, we need to do another tax-based check. With the manufacturers institution, we're now producing so much more. And after many revolts, we finally got victory over court and country. Something to mention, while this was going on, I missed a nobles' revolt in England, losing them as a union. I could go restore the union, but England has been so much trouble and they're going to take so long to annex. It's not even worth it to me at this point to spend so much time and effort dealing with them. But with that disaster now done, it's time to invade Castile once again. This time we want to connect our land from Granada to Aragon. It's now time to take advantage of our government reform and move our capital with our new king. Lisboa has served us really well over the years, but now with us consolidating more Spanish land and also getting more Portuguese in Morocco, a better location for our capital would be in Sevilla. But with the amount of money we're making at this point, I could not spend it all myself without intense micro, so I turned on automation of building buildings and RGOs, and then also built on top of that. Just because you automate doesn't mean that you can't build yourself. It just means the AI builds, and then you can also build on top. More proximity cost reduction advances means that we're going to get even more control, more taxes, more money. And we are on our last church aspect. I chose a church aspect that gave 10% literacy, another one that gives crown power, and another one that gives war score cost and belligerent gain and antagonism reduction. There's so many choices for Protestant church aspects, well, Lutheran church aspects, and it was honestly quite hard deciding which one to go for. And this is what our colonial empire was looking like in 1666. Another 2 wars against Castile, and this is what we looked like. Another benefit of being Lutheran is that we can accept Lutheran pops from places they're being prosecuted and bring them in to our lands, getting more pops. And we brought more New World goods such as tobacco, chilies, and potatoes into Iberia. Most of the time when I got the new RGO, I would just upgrade it to the max level, and this would produce so much money, not just on tax base because these goods were such high value, but also on trade. We also spread coca to our African colonies, which was also incredibly profitable. We also used this opportunity to get more coffee in Brazil and Colombia. I touched on it before, but now we were really pumping out the coffee production and spreading it to Iberia first, then to other Europeans after for profit. And as I started finishing culture converting Morocco, I noticed that the city styles changed from like Arab, Middle Eastern style to European style. You can see that it's almost all of Morocco now is Portuguese as a primary culture. Also, through the Manufacturers Institution, we unlocked lacquerware manufactories. This is a good that only gets produced in China or in the Far East in the first 4 ages, but in the 5th age as a European, you can build it, and these buildings are so profitable. Using the Colombian Exchange situation, I basically turned all of my African holdings into coca production facilities to pump coca to send to Europe. Yeah, I definitely think we're the baddies here, chat. But I didn't like how much of the coca the Africans were getting, so I decided, you know what, it's time to make my own market center here that's exclusive to just ship coca. And then Australia, which I was colonizing in the meanwhile, I turned into a gigantic tobacco farm. And of course, we can't forget growing more chili in Iberia. Must sell more chilies. This exploitation of goods literally made us richer than the next 3 nations combined. Our next steps were to continue destroying Castile, who is allied to Scotland now, which we navally invaded. Surprisingly, Scotland had 400k troops, which was more than England, but we still won, getting just enough land to form Spain. Cool thing with nation formables in EU5 is that you get all the new advances on top of your previous nation's advances. So all of these advances right here, we get them on top of the Portuguese advances. And since we form Spain as Portugal, we get a different flag than if you form Spain as Castile, or as Aragon, or as Navarra. Oh God, what have I done? This is the ugliest colonial nation I've ever seen in my life. Alright, so last steps here for this video. We now just want to get as many market centers outside of Iberia as we could get. We started with Sofala, which we took from Rosvi Empire, which was... he didn't even have professional armies yet. And then a war in Malaya. Then another war in India. And another war in India. And then a war against the Khmer Empire, where we took Angkor. And with all the money flooding into Iberia, this is what Iberia consistently looked like. Just a million buildings building at the same time, all the time. Looking good. Then we had to take some land in China, you know, of course, for Portuguese port city LARP. I didn't take Macau here, but I did take Guangzhou, which is another market center. And then finally, the Age of Revolutions in 1737. This age means rebellious colonial nations, so probably a lot of colonial nation wars. And since we had insane literacy, we would have probably also been the revolutionary target. And my last two final wars was a war against Japan, which was actually insanely hard. They had like 300,000 troops and were up to date in tech, so I had to send many troops there. But with that ends this campaign for me. I took Izumi, another market center. But there you go, the end of this campaign. I didn't go into a lot of details about a lot of things, but I'm going to leave that as stream content. And later on, I'm going to make specific videos and more in-depth campaigns. This is more of just like a taste or a flavor of the content. You can check me out on twitch.tv/AbsoHabibi. Of course, like I was saying earlier, because we're in the Age of Revolutions and we have big colonial nations, most of our colonial nations are incredibly disloyal and probably going to start triggering colonial revolution wars if we continued playing. We ended the campaign as military hegemon, economic hegemon, cultural hegemon, naval hegemon, and of course our final income screen with our tax base. Just look at that line. And here is our final control, and some other stats will show on the screen. So for those of you guys that are interested in seeing what my nation looked like by the end of this campaign. So enjoy that. Check out other videos if you haven't already. More EU5 content coming, etc., etc. And check me out live on twitch.tv/AbsoHabibi. I'll be streaming a lot of EU5 very soon.